Yeah, we're going to look at the future of the sales profession now, a little ahead of time. So I'm going to ask my chums Alison, Steve and Ian to come up onto the stage now and arrange themselves beautifully on these chairs. Alison Edgar here, and Ian Moyse, and Steve Burton. If you make your way up to the... Are they here, Jen? Otherwise, we've got a bit of a gap in the proceedings, and I can talk the hind leg of a donkey, but maybe not for 10 minutes. Oh, it's okay. Look, they've all been skulking outside. Where have you been? Heavens above! No, we are calling on you a little bit early, chaps. So here's Ian Moyse, here's Alison Edgar, and that's Steve coming through, wrestling with an umbrella. All righty. If you take these 3 seats this side here, chaps, that's super. There we go. And I'll sit at the very end, okay? There we are, yeah. Well, listen, we're looking at the future of the sales professional. Now, the US Trade Secretary, Treasury Secretary, actually, Steve Mnuchin, says that artificial intelligence is not on his government's radar because it probably won't come into fruition for another 50 or 100 years. But he said that because he's an idiot. And it would have come as a surprise for a man that I know, I interviewed about 2 years ago, who's actually using artificial intelligence right now to control how oil flows around southern Russian oil fields. And he's a little bit anxious as to whether he's fully in control all of the time. But I better not mention the oil company's name, or I might get assassinated with polonium. But that's him. Basically, it's with us now, and certainly machine learning and algorithms that make our life easier and actually does deliver sales. If you just think about the algorithms that delivers you the searches that you see on Google, you click on one of the top 3 results, you buy something, that's sales generated using machine learning, learning your patterns of search behavior and so on and so forth. So none of that's to be feared in any way. It's got to be dealt with. So we're going to get some ideas as to how we can future-proof our salespeople in the future, and also just general tips on how we can improve our skills portfolio, if you like. Now, take a look at the CVs of our speakers. They're very impressive people. Briefly, let me introduce Alison Edgar, AKA the Entrepreneur's Godmother, Managing Director of Sales Coaching Solutions and Advocate of Small Business. Ian Moyse, he's going to tell us about the tools available to salespeople now, as well as sales generally. He's Sales Director of Natterbox, the cloud telephony provider. I really am stuttering, aren't I? And you're also a top performer with lots of awards to your name. And here, I think last year you became Salesman of the Year, didn't you, Steve Burton?
I did, yeah.
On this stage? Some stage like this?
On a stage, yeah.
Fantastic. And you're Head of Sales Training at The Point Company.
I am. How are we all doing? All good?
A big round of applause for the panel, please. That's good stuff. Okay. Well, listen, let's start by identifying then what customers want ahead, because I guess where they go, we must follow. Alison, stripping away the tech talk for a moment. Technology is a tool that customers are using. It's just a tool. Their mentality is also changing because they're using these tools, I guess. You've got a key phrase. Treat customers how they want to be treated, not how you want to be treated. What do you mean by that?
So for me, part of the methodology that I've created and I teach is around DISC profiling, so really understanding the ways that different people operate. Are they task? Are they relationship? Are they introvert? Are they extrovert? And a lot of the times I find when I'm training salespeople, or historically, we treat people the way that you want to be treated yourself. So if you want a quick call, you do it that way. If you want to go into a lot of detail, but literally it is about the other way around, and looking at now the tools that are out there. One of the things that we do, I'm a big advocate of using LinkedIn, and another one of my phrases, I go, it's not 1984. We have these wonderful tools, wonderful pieces of technology, but a lot of people, again, they use it the way they want to be treated. So we do things like LinkedIn in colour. So for anybody that uses DISC as one of their fundamentals of how they sell, for example, the introverts, again, potentially might be wearing the suits. If you have looked at someone on LinkedIn, potentially they might be an extrovert and they might be relationship focused. So potentially their LinkedIn photo may have a photo with them as a selfie with a pina colada. So again, by using technology like that, you can really start to work how you engage rather than just a standard one size fits all. And that's where, again, for things like, you know, artificial intelligence and, you know, really understanding behaviors, I think it's definitely the way that sales is moving forward. But ultimately, people buy people, and there are tools now which really can enhance how they buy you.
Well, okay, I want to test the theory that actually people are avoiding people in the sales process actually in due course, but would you broadly echo, Steve, what Alison has said there about it's about personalisation, the experience has got to be individualised, if you like?
Well, first things first, if you disagree with what I say, feel free to chirp up, right? It is a Q&A, right? So feel free, I won't be offended. I think less and less people are picking up the phone. I think salespeople need to understand that sales is a science, and like any science, innovation and information drives it forward. I think too many salespeople think that they learned how to sell 25 years ago, and sales is sales. Now, sales is our life skills, sales are transferable to this day and age, but we should be life learners. We should be looking at market trends, looking at technology innovations, and working out where that adds value to the sales process and the customer journey. And what do I mean by that? Well, automation of the sales process is already happening. You read all these doom and gloom stories about replacing jobs, etc., etc. Now, if you're an inadequate salesperson and you do not use the tools that are out there and will be out there in the next 10 to 15 years, then you should be replaced, all right? Because the information is out there for everybody to adopt, to look at and to train. And like any profession, you should be investing in yourself and in your teams to look at what's working, to your competitors, look at benchmarks, look to the states where they've adopted a lot of the sales automation tools, a lot of the technologies out there, and utilize that to arm yourself moving forward. I mean, the salesperson in the future, to coin a phrase, I spoke to one of my colleagues at SalesLoft in the States. He said, you know, the future salesperson should be like Iron Man, human controlled but armed with all the sales tools to optimize you smarter, faster, stronger, and to be able to provide your customer with a more tailored, personalized approach. Technology is never going to replace charisma. It's never going to replace the intangibles. But if you're working for a transactional sales company where you don't have a key if you've got no key differences in your product, and the customer can go and find the information online with a seamless point of sale on a phone, on a computer, and make that purchase without talking to a salesperson, they will. So you've got to ask yourself, where do I add value? Do I add insight? And do I add value to the customer experience to facilitate a change?
I think we're going to drill more into that as the conversation goes on. Ian, tell us a little bit about your view of where customers are going.
So you'd have heard the phrase before, I'm sure, the buyer dynamic has changed, and I truly believe this, having been in sales quite a few years. You're all buyers, right, as consumers yourselves, and there's a variety of different ages in the room. So when you go to buy something today, you behave differently than people did 10 years ago, 20 years ago. There's no doubt about it. So let's I'm going to do a quick, this is one of the dangerous ones if the audience doesn't take part, that I'm flawed, but how many of you, when you go to buy something, maybe you're going to buy a DVD, a movie, or you buy something off Amazon or an app on the Apple Store, look at what the rating is from other people? And look at quickly the reviews and see what they say, and then make a quick decision. They're people you don't know. Mm-hmm. You have no clue who they are. They're not trusted advisors to you. And often the apps are 59p, right? But like me, it's not being stingy, but you do look because you think, well, oh, it's rubbish. Why am I even bothering? That's the behaviour we have today. Information is available at our fingertips, which wasn't before, and we all do it without even thinking. Buyers do that in business as well. And there's all these stats around 60 to 70% of the selling journey is done before the customer interacts with the salesperson. So the days of, that I remember, turning up and they say, well, tell me about you and your company, and gone. They know the good, the bad, the ugly, what other people are saying about you, with hardly any effort from any device, 24/7, and that's the world we're selling in. So what I see is there's two types of salespeople. There's the legacy salesperson who isn't changing because they're in a habitual
Should we
pattern.
call him Rusty Man instead of Iron Man?
You can
Okay.
take that one. And then we've got what I see is the new people coming into this, and millennial, the X, different generations, all this stuff. And I think the historic salespeople have got to change to the world we're in. Personally, I think the new people coming into this have gone too far and changed in ways that are moving away from what we need. There's a balance in the middle, which is using the technology, but is not totally using the technology. I'll give you one thing and I'll give it back. What I've seen a behaviour from young people, I've got quite a young sales team and I've had that across different companies, is moving to trying to sell over these electronic mediums. So interacting with the customer on email, it is a tool, but then have you spoken to them and got some feedback? Oh yeah, I've got that, and this and this, okay. And what you called them? No, I've got an email. That's not speaking to them. There is no interaction, there is no tonality of voice, there is no real feedback, but they see that as a negotiation. I've sent them the pricing, they've given me comment, I've gone back, you're negotiating on email. That is not good selling. Email it, and I say all the nods. So the danger we've got, I think, is getting the balance between not using the new tech and data and etc. to be better at what we do in a skilled profession, and going too far and just using that.
Couldn't you make a good living just by throwing the hook out there? You're saying, still, reel them in and do the face-to-face. But you could make a good living without doing that. Could you go tools only? No?
I think it depends on what you're selling. If it's something where it's very transactional, easy, like you see on Amazon, I think Amazon does a fantastic job, and I'll go on live chat and talk to them, and they'll answer what I need, and it's done, it's simple, and that works. But if you move into more complex sales or something where people are investing more, you need that interaction, and people do buy from people. I totally believe that. We've won business where our technology or product in multiple companies I've worked in has been very similar. Most of us have products that we have competitors, right? I mean, great if you didn't. And the competitor typically isn't a million miles different on price or function. The customer has to make something differential decision, and often I've had customers after the effect when we've won them say it was how you dealt with us. It's how you made us feel, we trusted you, you came and saw us and the others didn't. Simple things, because it's still a human making that decision.
Well, you know, that brings me on to an anecdote I've got about going into Apple, getting appled up, got my little Mac, didn't I, got my iPhone, all the rest of it a few years ago. And the salesman who was very, very good and saved me a few bob as well, coming to me to the door and saying, Tim, this is just the beginning of our relationship, not the end, which was really spooky at the time. But I sort of get it now. And Alison, you argue actually it's going to be a continuing relationship with the customer that's going to be more and more important.
Yeah, so for me, I've got a little bit of an analogy that I use, because as the entrepreneur's godmother, I work a lot around the startups, micros and owner-managed businesses. Under my other brand, I work with sales teams, and I speak a lot at events, and what I do is I get a show of hands. So I'll say, who in the room really knows the difference between sales and marketing? And in a room this size, you probably get 5 hands that go up. So again, these aren't salespeople.
Who knows the difference between... okay, don't try it here.
Probably, I would hope there would be quite a few more. I should hope, yeah. But what I use is an analogy around golf. So I used to play golf for the West of Scotland, and again, all my things come from things that I've done in my life. So I talk about marketing being the people that tee it up. They put the tee in the ground and they put the ball in the tee. Then us, the salespeople, we take it down the fairway, we put it in the green and we put it in the hole, because only when the ball goes in the hole do we actually make any money. Usually at this point, the marketing guys go, Alison, that's wrong, so wrong. And I'll go, okay, why is that wrong? And they go, well, what happens is we put the tee in the ground, we put the ball in the tee, we put it right up to the pin, and you sales guys tap it in and take all the glory. But now, again, I think the change is things like self-serve, things like Amazon, things like people just buying off the shelf. That's a hole-in-one for marketing. So although we're calling that sales, I completely disagree, because I think that's marketing, it's not sales. And an example of where I think the two things meet together, we've got Zendesk on our website. And again, this is going to sound a bit ageist, but not that I would employ somebody that's not a millennial, but the way that I work, I need fast pace. We go really quickly, and I find millennials, the pace they work at is just spot on. And we're on Zendesk, and we really engage. We don't just chat, we actually use it, so my team love it. And what they then do is they take it off marketing, get the phone number, and I'll phone them. So that's where sales and marketing and technology can work together. So again, I think, yeah, it's great if we could get marketing holes in one. It would be brilliant, but it's the combination between sales and marketing, technology, that are the things that I think are the way forward in sales.
Where do you get, Steve, your ideas as to how the servicing of the customer, or the landing of the sale, the first point of contact, how do you get a sense of that evolution? Is it through the zeitgeist, through the network, or is it face-to-face? Is it day in, day out? Or is that too close? Are you too close to it at that stage? Do you have to take a step back?
All I can tell you is this: the demand generation and lead generation process has changed dramatically, even in the last 5 years. Now, anyone who doesn't think that's the case, I'm sorry, but you're wrong, right? On a daily basis, I'm watching people doing this. I'm doing it myself at grassroots level. So the power of your professional branding and personal branding is massive. Anyone who's sat out there who do not think, if you don't think you've got a strong professional brand, I suggest you go and look at that. As Ian said, people will go and look at recommendations from people they've never seen or never met or probably don't even exist. Might be a bot, and they'll make decisions about whether they want to work with you based on that. So I think it has to be a two-stage approach. Yes, you've got to use your social platforms, you've got to use the technology at hand to optimize and speed up the lead generation, demand generation approach, and speed up facilitating relationships. But that alone does not work. You've got to take them into the real world and leverage your network, speak to people, and keep personal relationships, because that's going to be a key differentiator moving forward. If someone can just buy a product, they're not invested emotionally in you or your service, then when it comes time to renewal or to upsell or to sell something else into the organization, they don't have a personal relationship with you. All right. So going back to what Ian said earlier today as well, that key personal touch of talking to people outside of the social approach and outside of the AI and outside of all the tools we can use will keep customers coming back to you moving forward.
See that confusion about sales and marketing? As you see that relationship, the continuing relationship with the customer, I have to say that sounds expensive as well. That sounds more costly than finding the target, making the sale.
Well, I'm sure it is, but not making any sales is pretty expensive as well, right? So you just got to weigh that up and work out what your quota is and how you're going to achieve it. I mean, there's a million bits of technology out there, and this is one of the key points. As salespeople, we should be active learners, right? This is one of the messages from the ISM. It's continually invest in your learning and continuing invest in the information and key practices. And that doesn't mean going out and putting an audio tape in. You know what for audio tape? Reading a book. Sorry, I'm not that old. VHS, yeah, Betamax. But it doesn't. We're here talking about technology. It doesn't mean that. I do a lot of work into the IT market. I deal with a lot of IT professionals, and they are active learners. By nature, CISOs are active learners. They're constantly looking at new technology. They're constantly looking at better ways to do the job, because they have to. Because if they don't, and they get breached, they're going to get in big trouble. And as salespeople, we should be actively looking at this stuff on a daily basis. I make demos, and I sit through demos myself every week, just to keep abreast of the changes in the marketplace, to use the technology. Because look, not all of it's great. Some of it actually slows down the whole process, and no matter what the salesperson says, I'm telling you, I use the stuff, right? So it does slow down the process, and there is an argument to be made as well that I work with a lot of clients in the States. I like to learn and plagiarize a lot of ideas around innovation coming out of the States, and I suggest you do the same. And what I will say is a lot of their salespeople, it's gone past the tipping point. They've become actually so heavily reliant on marketing optimization, sales tools to generate leads, sales tools to help put apps in the calendar, that they're actually losing the phone skills and the human interaction skills. So that's my belief system, that moving forward, yes, all the technology's out there. Yes, people can use AI. I think, to steal one of Gary's just come back from Dreamforce's phrases, AI is there to help us. It's not going to replace us in the next 5 to 10 years. It's too expensive anyway to utilize it. But we need to be utilising it in a measures that is productive and enhances the buyer experience as well as allowing us to keep a personal relationship.
Alison, do you have to be a leader in these fields, or can you do what Steve says, just steal some ideas from other people who have led just before you? Don't be too far behind, mind you, but look at other people's experiences first.
Do you know, it is really interesting, because this is something I think a lot about, because for me, I like to be a leader, but you have to find your own things to lead in. And I try not to plagiarise other people's ideas, but at the moment, the more and more I see, people are plagiarising other people's ideas. Watch out, Dan, I'm starting memes. Only joking. But again, you look at what does work, and if you can take something that does work and evolve it, then there's nothing wrong with it. For me, I've just finished writing my book, and as a dyslexic, trying to write a book was one of the hardest things I think I've ever done. And writing a book on sales, which is something I absolutely adore and I'm really passionate about, but I'm thinking, has anybody written this before? Or is this quite original content? And I think actually probably people have written around, let's face it, we get it drummed into as a salespeople. It's all about you get 2 ears and 1 mouth, use them in that order. That's not new, but actually now a combination of the tools that are out there, I think it is new. So I think that ultimately, people by people, it's all about asking the right questions, using open questions, finding out what the customer needs, matching your product to that, and closing. So again, that's not changed. All the guys in here are salespeople. That's not new to them, but hopefully it's not new to them. But how you now do that with the use of the tools that are out there, I think it's okay to create your own, and again, ultimately, people by people. I mean, the name that I hear most that comes out all over the place is Grant Cardone. Oh, he's amazing, he does this, he does that, Grant Cardone this, and I think, well, that's great, but again, to me, the way that we sell in the UK is different to the way we sell in the States. And I do a lot of delivery in the States and, the Middle East, and I think it's different. I think culturally things are different as well. But if you can take what Grant Cardone does and turn it into your own version of how you deliver or how you do it, then that's okay. It's about making everything you do your own, because ultimately, again, people are buying you.
I'm going to drag us back a little bit to what consumers want to understand. And in a moment, I'm going to ask you to give us some ideas of some specific tools you have found useful in the sales process. But Ian, first of all, I just want to lob a couple of things that I heard this morning, actually, and see if you agree. I think I know that you do on this particular one. Customer experience is key, and you say that trumps everything, including price now.
Yeah, so there's lots of studies coming out of that, and I never like to cite one because it can bias to what you want it to say, but all of them are consistently saying in the next 3, 4, 5 years, customer experience is going to surpass price and product feature as the differential that customers buy on. Because if you think about it, think about the context of whatever you sell, or what you're in, do you have a competitor, and are they similar? And we have that. Every company I've worked with is someone similar. We have a few features or functions they don't, which we try, but they'll be the same, trying to find your Achilles heel and selling differently. And price-wise, you're typically in the same area, and price can be moved, right? You both play that game. So what differentiates A from B for the client? And all of these studies are showing customer experience is absolutely critical. And that's not just the salesperson, actually. That's going back to an old edict we've heard many years ago, but few do, is your whole company is the salesperson. Every interaction that customer has with you, whether it be on the website, electronically, so it's digital or real, is an impression it makes on them that's going to impact the decision they make. So it isn't just the salesperson's responsibility, it's everyone. And that's the hard part for a lot of businesses. Because if you think, I'm not going to mention names, but some other big names and big companies in the UK, you may love the sales, but it's great. But then when you call them and you don't get a good experience, or you go to the website and you can't find out, and it just becomes painful. And there are big names we've all dealt with as consumers probably, which I'm not going to name, but you can think of some now where you think, you think they should be better at that size.
Yeah.
And they're not, because it's hard, right? If you get to be huge and you're a legacy company, customer experience is really hard to do because you've got legacy systems, legacy data, and all this stuff going. The salesperson may be fantastic, building rapport, you really like them, but everything else, and you're making that judgment. Is the salesperson going to look after me and surpass what I get as the business, or is it the business I'm dealing with? So there's a lot more goes into this than
Alison,
we've seen in the past.
Can I just add into this? So I come from corporate background, and we all had to have a vision statement and a mission statement, and I never really knew what that was. But when I created my company, at the core of everything I teach, I genuinely believe when it's delivered correctly that sales and customer service is exactly the same thing. So one of the things, again, especially when I'm working with small business owners or if I'm working with young teams who maybe confidence is one of the things that I see. And again, with the millennials coming through because they're not used to dealing with phone calls or, this is the problem is the confidence level. So I also do customer service training, and when I do the training, the slides are exactly the same, bar 2 different slides. And that's how I can prove to them when it's delivered correctly, sales and customer service is the same thing. So I think, again, if you're given a good service, that's where sales comes from, and really keeping that at the heart of companies is how you do that. It's not rude to ask for something, because if you know what the customer needs and you match it, you're not selling. If it sounds like you're selling, you're doing it wrong. You are just delivering amazing customer service.
I'm coming to the tools question in a second, but I want to lob in at this point again. Something, again, we heard this morning. Customers are buying experiences more, Steve. They're wanting things less.
Okay.
Does that sound something you can cope with? You have to.
Well, look, I'm going back to my original point. It's future salespeople need to refer back to the fact, what value are you adding to your customer if your product does not have any key differences to your competitors? Because you're always going up against 2 or 3 people who pretty much do the exact thing that you do. Now, it depends on the complexity of the sale and how much value you can add and insight you can add as a trusted advisor, and that's what is getting a lot of the sales I can see in the technology game over the line at the moment, right? So it's creating a seamless customer experience, a pleasurable customer experience. That's after you've obviously got the lead, and that's after you've brought the lead to market. But I think moving forward, it's going to become more prevalent, because ultimately, if customers have access to more and more information and they can make the decisions for themselves, and there's not that much difference between your price point or your product, they're going to buy based on customer relationship.
Yeah, I take your point, but you tell me this fascinating story. We've probably all heard it, actually, about how they sold the Tesla car, right?
Yeah.
So take us through that and tell me what customer experience there was in that sales process.
Well, I've been thinking about this. It's a prime example that salespeople can be replaced, not in the future, but now. All right, the Tesla was one of the most successful launches, I believe, nearly 14 billion in future sales once fulfilled. There was no salespeople involved, and this is actually something I took from Tony Hughes, who was over in Dreamforce. There was no salespeople involved. It was a live streamed presentation, resulting in people being directed to a sales car online. So yes, put $1,000 down to reserve your future car. There were some basic specs and some basic information based on the automobile. It was the most successful launch in history, and that proves now access to information will lead people to go and buy themselves. Now, I believe that obviously Elton Musk has got a massive personal brand, so he's got credibility within that brand itself. So again, going back to the point that Ian said, people looking for recommendations, looking for the opinions of others, it's never been more important in this day and age. And that's something moving forward. I believe salespeople, we've touched on being savvy with the sales tools, learning, but also you have to keep abreast of your personal brand, make sure it's credible and valuable and provides insight and value to your customers, resulting in you becoming differentiated to your competitors.
Ian, you've got a mischievous look in your face.
Yeah, so I get that point, but one of the things I try and do is when you understand that customers are going to do their own research and technology the way we behave, is how do I disrupt that? Because if they're doing their own research and you're going to wait to point 60-70% through the sale and start to engage, how do I get engagement at 20 or 30% through when the competition doesn't? Because now I can engage and be personable. I truly believe, and I'll be held up of getting this wrong, but that I can outsell a website with some information. Because I can talk to you and convince you differently, and emotion comes into it, and we're still humans, right? We won't become robots and automatons, if I can say it.
A recent Forrester report came out saying that 70% of people would prefer not to use a salesperson moving forward. Now, I agree with what you're saying, but it's down to the complexity of the sale. If someone can make a transactional sale by avoiding a salesperson, they will. 20 years ago, people would not do business unless they could speak to somebody, right, or see them face to face.
Yeah, I take that on. Oh, that's loud.
Easy. Calm down.
That wasn't me. I take that on, but I think sales are different, right? So it does depend. I agree with you. It depends on the type of sale. But if it's a complex value-based sale, I'm going to be able to convince that person, because yes, they've read stuff, but I can change their mind and convince them and talk them out. Well, that's data, but now we're interacting. I can ask questions, interact, and guide based on their personality profile, whether high D or in disc profile, etc. A flat information or standard electronic stuff can't do that. It's very difficult to ascertain who they are, and the AI may change that as we move forward, and may be able to personalise based on, we can judge the personality of this person and present different information to them than the other person here, because you want lots of information as a high I, but you just want quick, short stuff because you make a quick decision as a high D. But that's not there yet. May come, but I as a human can do that. And I can interact and build some rapport, find commonality. And funnily enough, we were with a customer yesterday. We've got Teslas through the company and some branded ones. And they came out in the car park afterwards, and we spent half an hour because they were so interested in the car. And we were building rapport and having a laugh of how many times we're going to have to stop on the way home. 3 times, by the way, so I wouldn't buy one, just to get home from Birmingham. Not fun. But there was rapport built. Yeah. No technology is going to replace that.
Alison, grab a mic there.
I kind of think we're not far off being there. So you look at like LinkedIn, as I was saying before, looking at somebody's profile picture gives you a fairly good idea how to start using emotional intelligence. And you've got tools like Crystal Knows, and there are tools out there even for LinkedIn if you're business to business. And we do it a lot, an example of how we use that and the tools that we use. So on LinkedIn, if somebody looks at my profile, my best practice, sometimes I'm busy, but I try and connect back with them and ask them, thanks for viewing my profile. Were you looking for something specific or just to widen your network? And a few months ago, I got a message back, and again, I looked at the colour, looked at the profile, so again, I knew if it was a red, a green, a blue, or a yellow. And she said, well, actually, we're looking for somebody to run the first event in the Middle East of its kind to teach entrepreneurism and sales.
Nice.
So in my, I'm doing the mini fist bump, woo, pick me. So again, with that, the next step to that is obviously she's in Kuwait, I'm in the UK, so you sell the Skype, that's fantastic. Love to discuss when are you available and set it up. So again, I knew how to interact with her because I'd already looked at her profile, looked at her photo, and I had a fair idea that she was task focused. So again, I knew what to say in the message, and then, sold in, and we delivered the event.
We'll talk a little bit about tools now. It's funny because I thought I'd be using Skype a lot more, doing the things that I do. So I do a lot of telephone conferences with lovely people like this ahead of these conferences to discuss what we're going to discuss, yeah? And I always thought I'd be using telepresence and Skype all the time, or FaceTime, whatever. No, it's the phone. It's the phone. So I don't know whether that's a generational thing yet, and whether the rest comes and so on, but ultimately you still think you're going to end up face-to-face somehow.
To me, we don't know what's going to happen with when we leave Europe. So to me, I work closely with DIT, I work closely with Liam Fox, and for me, export is the big thing. So when I work with teams, what I do is I get them to, again, sell the Skype, and a lot of them are looking for distributors all over the world. And the Skype is, to me, just the way forward. Like yesterday, I'm working with creatives, teaching creatives to sell, which is really interesting because they know nothing about sales at all, but they know loads about jewellery, so it's amazing. So I've been literally out of an 8-hour day yesterday. I think Kaya probably tell me more because she was watching the time, but I would say 6 hours out of that day from my home office was all over the world, closing sales by Skype, and that's where, you know, I think you're even the days of the travelling sales guy, to me that's something that, you know, you look at the cost to the business. Salespeople are an expensive commodity, especially if they don't hit target, and obviously you've got the cars, you've got the petrol, so I think a lot of this can be done by using the technology that we've out there. And you know, I'm a prime example of a leader not a leader in the field, there's probably other people doing it, but that's the steps that I take it, because as a business owner, I'm trying to cut every single cost that I can and maximise opportunities. So, you know, I have to sell less because it's cost me, or, you know, I can change my margins around on that. So I think we're kind of there in a lot of ways.
Okay, I'm going to, and we'll talk about the individual salesperson in a second then, but just briefly, I've been promising people an idea of the tools you use. You mentioned Crystal Knows, I think, whether it's a specific trade name or whether you want to talk about a technique. Give us a range of tools that you think that the new salesperson and the existing salesperson should really be getting involved with.
I just want to make it clear that it depends what you sell, right?
That's true.
It depends what you're trying to achieve, and it depends what you sell. But for demand generation, for booking appointments, getting them in your diary, I'm a big fan of Sales Loft. And the reason behind that, it goes back to my analogy of being Iron Man. It does automate the process. It does use machine learning to help you in that process. But the key to this is you get to personalize your messaging, you get to personalize your approach, and that's where the human interaction comes in. You can use all the sales tools in the world if you wish, but if you take out the secret ingredient of a little bit of human interaction to help build rapport and help facilitate the process, it does not work, right? Nudge AI is a very good data scraper. It scrapes the internet for tangible information about your prospects, giving you actionable insights, allows you to then go out and prospect people at the right time. AI.I, that books meetings in my diary for me, follows up, confirms them, all the stuff that is done manually. So I can see this happening on a daily basis. I'm doing it myself. I've got 40 guys and girls doing it myself, doing it every day, and I can see the effect. Less people are picking up the phone, right? That's my business. Less people are picking up the phone. I see it time and time again. People come into the office, Steve, I want sales, I want meetings. Well, what do you want me to do? Make more calls. That's not how it works, right? You've got to be more measured in your approach. You've got to use the technology out there to get better results. But do not rely on the technology. Use it to enhance your process. Use it to optimize your time and your skills. I mean, even the likes of Einstein coming out from Salesforce, plenty of sales managers in this room who probably, you know, justify a lot of time measuring pipeline and quantifying leads. It's going to do it all for you, and it's going to learn and do it for you. So I would suggest checking that out as well, because you might not be able to justify to the management board you spent, you know, X amount of time looking at your pipeline. It's going to provide reports integrated from Salesforce. So those are the ones I currently recommend and currently use. But again, you cannot take away the human element or it doesn't work.
Ian, some specific ideas?
So the first one is social selling's been spoken about today, and I think Daniel would have covered some of that. And for me, that's the tool there is the methodology, not the technology. Too many times what I'm seeing is and LinkedIn's done a great job with Sales Navigator. How many of you got Navigator out of interest? Yeah, that's a tool, right? It isn't social selling. Social selling is a methodology which then leverages tools to achieve it. And too often I see, and they've done a good marketing job to get that. How many of you use Twitter for social selling? There's a problem right there. And I see this in salespeople. I sit on a board separately of a social selling company, and we see this in companies that we go into. And it's a behavioural thing, right? How many of you are on Twitter? Let's try that one. And again, I see that. A lot of people, I haven't got a Twitter account, number one. And if I do, I don't use it for sales. Why I haven't got a Twitter account? Because I don't want to tell people about the sandwich I just had. That's not what it's about. You can't even listen if you're not on it to what your customers potentially are doing. So let me give you a couple of quick examples. So they're tools, Twitter, LinkedIn, Navigator, etc. And I train and have young sales teams, and suddenly the light bulb goes on when I do a short, an hour session, because I show real world examples of, okay, here's how I use that. So I've had cold, without doing cold calling, because cold calling I think is dead.
I bet you don't know how to do that anymore, do you?
No, cold calling is dead, it's about warm calling.
What calling?
Warm calling, right? So I've had meetings with the global CEO of Specsavers, the CIO of Burberry, totally from cold, and everyone else is trying to get through because I've gone in through the back door using social and using simple techniques and methodologies and got meetings with them, which other people couldn't get. A recent one, as an example, one of my salespeople was trying to get hold of someone, trying phoning and all this stuff, and I just looked on their profile, did a bit of what I call Sherlock, so it's looking at everything, looking at their different profiles and spotting connections and things that other people haven't. Here's 6 clues. Right, if I had those up, I'm going to spot something that Sherlock would spot that Lestrade wouldn't. Okay? The clues are all there, but I've put them together to come up with a different conclusion. So that individual, salesperson, tried several weeks, can't get hold of these people, I'm sure there's a project going on. I sent one message, and it was real simple. I notice you're connected to so-and-so and commented on something they did. I happened to, a month ago, just done a webinar thing with them. Here's a link to it, might be of interest to you.
There we are.
I got a LinkedIn invite by the next morning from them saying, will you connect to me? And then I'd earned a little bit of report. Oh, great, what do you think of it? And I got the ability to ask, when's the project, what's going on? And my salesperson next to me was like, what? I've tried for weeks, couldn't get hold of them. Now, part of that was my biography, my online bio. I've worked really hard to make it worth connecting with me by doing things like this, getting my profile up, so I can leverage that, and doing podcasts and webinars that I've got. So I've created lots of accidents. So the tools, for me, are the skills that I've learned, and I'm still honing and learning in social. LinkedIn, Twitter, and technology tools help me. They're enablers, but they don't cause the effect that I want to get. If you don't know the methodology, you don't figure this out, the tool's not going to fix it. You're on Twitter, you tweet a few times, it's not going to suddenly fix it for you. You've got to figure out what's the behaviours I need to do as a salesperson or as a sales leader. So one more question, Hannah, how many of you are sales leaders in the room? You have the responsibility to get on board with this, because if you're not, your salespeople won't. You've got to support them, and you've got to understand it. And that's something I take pride in, that my salespeople, and they love it because they're learning something new and it works. I cannot emphasize it. I'd love no one else to get this, to be honest. I don't want my competition to know this, because we can get into places they can't using this.
I like that story of the workaround. I'm just going to share one quick workaround I did when I was a young journalist. Some young journalists don't do this, others do. That's the difference between them. We were trying to get hold of somebody down the countryside. We couldn't get hold of them, so I said, I know, I'll ring up the local post office. It was a small village. It had a post office. And I rang up the post office, and the post mistress answered, this is a long time ago. This is when phones were like this. You needed to have good finger muscles in those days, right? And I rang her up, and she said, oh, no, so I was doing a Scottish accent. It should be in Northern Ireland. Like,
Downtown Aberdeen.
It was something like, he's not working today. Oh, God.
Do you want me to do it? Oh, he's not working today.
Oh, did we get an Ulster accent? Oh, never mind. He won't be working today. Sure, he's been in the pub since 1 o'clock. She knew. That was the workaround. You use other connections to get hold of. We're going to have to work harder, smarter. Actually, smarter, but not necessarily harder.
Smarter.
Something like that?
Definitely smarter. So for me, and again, I think it's under strategy. And again, this is one of the things that I teach when I'm training entrepreneurs and teams. Be strategic. So for me, and it's about who's the movers and shakers. So no matter what you're selling, there'll be a mover and shaker. So for me, I don't know if anybody's heard of Enterprise Nation, but it's run by Emma Jones. And Emma Jones, to me, is like, in business, she is my girl crush. She's the only woman I've ever met that makes me feel like a sloth. But her target audience is, they've got 70,000 members or whatever, small businesses. So who's my target audience? It's small businesses. So again, a bit like Ian says, like I tried to get hold of her, and I was getting blocked every time. So I looked at her social media to find out how does she behave on social media. She's a big Twitter, she's not on Facebook, she's not on LinkedIn. So to me, again, retweeting her stuff and saying, oh wow, that's really interesting, become on the radar, and I think it's been on people's radar. And again, because of my association with Emma, it led to me being voted one of the UK's top 10 business advisors. It led to me going to Buckingham Palace to have tea with the Queen, to Downing Street. You know, all these things came from a strategy using social media. And, you know, I can't emphasize how important it is. The other one tool I just would like to add in quickly is, if I had £1 for every single person that tells me they're too busy to sell, I could be retired in my villa in the south of France. Time management in sales is its biggest thief. So I created, again, based on like Stephen Covey's, you know, talking about stealing other people's ideas, Stephen Covey's Rocks in the Jar, and again, using the quadrant, urgent, important, not urgent, not important. But again, when I train salespeople, I like to make it real. So I've taken that methodology and I call it Alison Edgar's Big Balls. Technical or what, and what I do is again look at the things that need to be done, and I look at it as basketballs, tennis balls, ping pong balls, and yay, it's done. So instead of having a linear to-do list, you give it in ball sizes. And even those who are sales managers and trying to communicate with your team, if you say, look, you know, guys, this is a basketball, it's got to be done. So because we all know, like, a basketball in the face is quite sore. So again, by creating in ball size, and how we use that, we use Trello. Does anybody use Trello?
Trello?
Oh, OMG, write it down, Trello. It's just the best thing for time management. And because it's in the cloud, if you've got a team or working remotely, then you can, you know, other people can put basketballs in your Trello board. And so again, this is where I think, guys, embrace this stuff. Don't be frightened of it. Love it, because it will just change the way you run your businesses or your sales or hit your targets. It's love it. Sure. Live it. Do it.
Some nice
Hashtag.
concrete ideas. Listen, I know you think this, but we're still getting to cope with the idea of you and your balls. So instead of getting you to answer right now, Steve, I suppose, I know Alison has said this, the younger generation of salespeople coming into the marketplace are going to be cool with a lot more of this. But, so that's a good thing. But, however, it doesn't have to be exclusively a young person's game, for goodness sake.
No, of course not. I mean, look, we got to look to the young people coming through the sales profession now, who potentially could be the buyers of the future. So we got to look, how do they like to communicate? How do they like to buy? How do they like to be, you know, how do they like to receive information? I can tell you right now, they don't like to be on the phone, right? Because that's my bread and butter. Like I was explaining to Alison before, and on a Monday morning when people ring in sick, they used to ring in sick, they don't ring in sick anymore, they send me a little picture of a guy being sick, you know, on WhatsApp, and then I have to go back to them and say, what's this? And they don't answer the phone to me. So then I have to send an angry face back with a boss's hat on, and then sometimes they give me a call back. So if that's what's happening now, how are people going to be like to buy in the future? Are we going to have to WhatsApp them? Are we going to have to send them a quote via, you know, Twitter? I don't know. But what I will tell you is there's never been a more emphasis on professional brand. People will look online and buy, I'm going to buy some lipstick, Kylie Jenner's advertising it. Yeah. Why? Because they believe what they see. Now, personal brand and insight and value are going to be the two key things that are going to make you different from your peers moving forward. And judging by the people I work with, and some of them are young sales superstars, but it's not like how I used to sell back in the day. If I'm looking at those for an indication of how people are going to buy in the future, it's changing. And if they're going to be savvy around technology, the salespeople are going to have to mirror that and communicate with them on the platforms they wish to be communicated on. And if you think they're going to change to what the salespeople want to do, then you're dreaming. And this is why I'm saying you need to start adopting. Don't use everything. Not everything works. Don't slow down your process. Don't stop building rapport, right? Don't do everything you learned 20 years ago. Keep doing it. But spice it up a little bit, enhance it, use some new tools, create your personal brand. If you don't know how to create a good personal brand, see Daniel Disney, he'll help you out, all right? And again, look to the future, look to where the markets are changing and what they're using, and see if it's adaptable to your product and your marketplace.
So add on to that to give you a takeaway. Show of hands, how many of you would invest £20 or so in something that's going to help you be much better at all this quickly, but help you have more value in the next 5 years? It should be every hand, right? So two books I'm going to recommend, very readable, that hit on this. One is a book called Known. Neither is mine, no commission. But a book called Known by Mark Schaefer, which helps you build your personal brand. And I wish I'd known it. I've done all this organically by learning, making mistakes over the last 5, 7, 8 years. And there's the shortcut. It's out. And another one is a book called Social Selling by Tim Hughes, a good friend of mine. It's the best-selling book on social selling. It's not technology, and that's the board of the company I'm on. It's about methodology and the change makers, the influencers. Who do you need to get? How do you do this now? They're really simple reads. They're not heavy going. You'll come out of it with lots of small ideas you can apply quickly that will make a difference right now to the way the world has changed. It's already changed. So that would be my short bit of value. It's up to you if you go and invest that in yourself.
A phrase I'm falling in love with these days at various conferences addressing similar issues is, it's not hard, it's just new. It's like learning how to drive a car. You will get there, it's just new. I was talking to one of our delegates here, Helen, I think it was, who said, I remember the days when, there was a big budget for training and those days have gone, and that's a shame. I'd just like to say, I can't imagine anyone not liking the idea of a tool that helps your productivity in terms of automation of simple systems, the diary reminders, those sorts of things that you've talked about, the critical part, and the collaboration within the cloud and so on. But are companies aware that they need to give their salespeople space and time enough, I don't know how long that would be, an hour, half a day, in order to get on board with these tools? Alison?
The ones that I work with are, because I ensure that is something, again, change doesn't happen overnight. It is about, really looking after it. And I think, we were talking before, so I come from, my original background is BT, so it wasn't 1984, I think it was 1988 or whatever it was, I can't remember. But there was no internet. Literally, we were, banging out the calls. We had, really strong KPIs, 100 calls a day, talk time of 3.5 hours a day. And, it was all very, chicken coopy, for lack of a better word. And I think that's where it's changed. I think the KPIs are really important, but ultimately it's about hitting target. And that's where, building time in for LinkedIn time or social media time. But, having been a top performer in blue chip, I think one of the things that, comes out, to me, sales is not a Monday to Friday 9 to 5 job. When I looked at the methodology that I created, it was based on the overachievers and why they overachieved. And it is, it is about, as Steve said, reading the books, learning the things. I do a lot of work in the stuff that I teach around mindset, about fixed and growth mindset, and I think you have to have a growth mindset now to be an overachiever, and really, and learning is key. That pesky internet has just changed the way we do things forever. Who did that? But it has, and again, sometimes for the better and sometimes for the worse. So, but I do think it's really important, but I do think that a lot of the learning, actually, that's your own personal development. That shouldn't be done in the 9 to 5. If you want to do additional, so like reading books, and like some of the, one of my clients, they do book group. So every week they do book group and then they talk about the book group. But I think book group should be done in lunchtime, not like prime selling time. So I do think, again, prime selling time has never really changed, that there are peak times where people will engage with you by phone or by Skype. So,
I've forgotten. We started this discussion 10 minutes early, and I completely forgotten that it's you guys ought to be asking more questions. So I do apologise. So let's get some questions coming from the audience now, boys and girls. Put your hand up if you've got any gaps that we want filling in from our chaps on stage, please. Let's have a look. Anyone? Yeah, gentleman over there.
Hi, all our opportunity sales consultants
Love Emma Jones. Girl crush.
I got a crush as well. Self-learning, it's really important that people might not be aware that they're out there now. There's things called MOOCs, massive open online courses.
Yeah.
And they're courses free of charge, thank you. They're free of charge courses that the universities release each year. There's a couple of hundred that are released each year. They're free of charge to use unless you want a certificate at the end of it. And you can do one of these literally over a 4 or 6 week period, and they cover all sorts of subjects, and you can do those in your spare time to improve and help your self-learning.
And can I feed back from that? Because I do think that's one of the things that we have taken in a positive note from the States, because they are very self-developing, and they do that. So I do think that, you know, a lot of the stuff that's come over the pond has been really positive around, you know, and even the Linda stuff on LinkedIn. For me, product-wise, I've created online courses so that, again, if you look at how I've had to future-proof my business, I love it when people self-serve. Bing, bing, we can ring the bell in our sleep. It's great. So, you know, again, don't be afraid of self-serve. You know, it's just what you do on top of that to upsell is a positive.
Another question from the audience here. Let's have a look. The gentleman there in the blue shirt.
Hello, you mentioned Tesla earlier, and I've had that Tesla experience, and I know Ian, you have. It's sort of saying the technology is going to work, but you're talking about £100,000 cars in a niche market. What's going to happen early next year, year after, when they launch Model 3 in the UK and it becomes volume? You're talking about different clientele, different customers. You cannot have that same approach.
Sorry, how's it going to work next year? Was that a question for me or for Ian?
Yeah, for any of you, yeah. What do you think?
I'm not sold on Tesla. Having stopped 3 times to charge 3 times, just a 4-hour journey to get back from Birmingham yesterday to Berkshire, I'm out of Tesla's story, I'm done.
All right, well, that's one customer they're not going to be getting, right? So fair enough. Look, I just want, who knows the results when it hits the UK next year, but I just wanted to illustrate a point that it's happening now, the automation of the sales process. I mean, that's an anomaly. That's something that's been highly publicised. It's something with a key innovator, a public figure behind. So that particular story is just to highlight that on a smaller level, it's happening all around us all the time. A lot of the clients I work for and work with don't believe that AI automation or the sales process has changed in the last 20 years, which I disagree with. And that's just an example of, on a large magnitude of something happening now. But it's things like, you know, salespeople being replaced by a shopping cart or a bot. Amazon are using it. Google are using it. It's happening all day, every day, all around us. And people just need to buy into the fact, don't embrace it, learn from it. And if it can add value to your process, if it can add value to how you sell, onboard it. If you don't think it can, don't use it. I mean, sales is about using what works for you. And that's my key message.
Thanks very much for your talk today. Just a quick question. So we've talked about the sales professional themselves, but if we look to the future, how do you think the role of the sales manager will change in terms of the way they lead and motivate their people?
So to me, again, I do think it does change, but I do fundamentally feel that using tools like DISC to understand your people and their motivators, because one of the things that I see, you know, the tool that we use is a thing called N-Size, and a lot of people think, all right, salespeople, they're all motivated by money, but when we profile salespeople, actually, yeah, again, some people are motivated by money, but others are motivated for different things. So again, I think the other thing I think that changes through sales management is more people are working remotely. So it's, again, making sure that you are doing Skypes to get that body language, especially for remote working. And we do a lot of remote working all the time. That I think that's where it becomes trickier. And you know, literally the WhatsApp story, I mean, that is, it's funny, but it's true. And again, I think it's setting the ground rules early on of what's acceptable, when it's acceptable to WhatsApp and when it's not. And for me, so Kaya, who works for me, she's in the audience at the back, but we've also got Nicola, and Nicola is really introverted, and as part of her training, I had to really make sure that every day she was making, and she's not in sales, she was in marketing, but 3 onboarding calls every day just to get those social skills. So again, I think it's understanding, especially younger people, is the key to managing. And you know, stay cool. If you're managing young people, you know, you don't want to be like the granddad dancing at a wedding, but really start to understand them a bit more and really integrate with them the way they want to be integrated. So coming back, because ultimately managing people is sales, it's just a different way of selling. It's getting other people to do what you want them to do.
Ian.
So I think the first question for me would be, is it a sales manager or a sales leader, sales mentor? You know, I started as a sales manager, there's no doubt. Operational management, great, I've been promoted up from being a salesperson. I like to think of myself now more as a combination of leader, mentor, is adding value to them, to their career, not just operationally, have you done this, have you done your forecast, all the stuff that operationally comes as part of it. And something I learned a few years ago is becoming the servant manager, the servant leader, is removing obstacles and get out their way. Give them the tools, give them the skills, mentor them, guide them, but get out their way. If you've got the right people, get the best out of them. So I think it's if you buy into that, it's then, well, what does that role become as opposed to the title of manager? Because I've seen a lot of people, well, I'm sales manager, and that immediately puts their brain set into operational management and doing that stuff. I look for, how do I add value to them for them to earn as much money as they can and be as successful as they can? Because that helps me achieve my goals.
Chaps, that's all we've got time for. Unless you've got a response to that. No, that's grand.
Hello there. So just one more?
Splendid, go ahead.
I'd just like to ask the audience panel, if I may, what's your view about sales productivity and qualification? I'm sort of interested in that, the fact that there's what, 5 million B2B salespeople in the States and 750,000 B2B salespeople in the UK. And my studies suggest that in the B2B with added value services, there's probably, they win 3 out of 10 deals. So in other words, we've got something like 4 million salespeople who spend all their time losing. And so I'm interested in what tools you see in the marketplace. We're specialists in the qualification company. And in terms of sort of help to, you know, there's only really 2 reasons why you lose a sale. One is you were outsold. We've talked about some of those reasons just now. And the other one, you were never going to win anyway because of politics. And so I'd be interested in what tools you see in the market for that.
Let me just add an added comment to that. There's another option. The customer does nothing. And I see a lot, so you're assuming there that 7 out of 10 go to someone else. I think a lot of them get deferred and they do nothing because they haven't understood the value of the outcome they're going to get outweighs staying the same. And that's one of the big fundamentals I see, and I've seen over the past 5-10 years, is lots of deals don't happen, and it's want to understand why. And I often ask for calls with customers where we've seemingly lost. Well, can I at least have a call? I'm not trying to convince you of anything. Can I just learn from it? And I'll do the call to understand, is it a skill set of my salespeople? Have they done something wrong? And often it's, we're not doing anything. So what we haven't done, what we've done is sold against, customer wants to do something, so we just sell what we've got and try and do it, rather than understanding and making sure it's a compelling enough reason they're going to do something. So I think there's an added anomaly in there. I don't know the stats, but there's definitely, from my anecdotal, and I see nods, that that's happening a lot.
Briefly, chaps.
Oh, I'll be very fast. So for us, I think marketing plays a big point in this, and we do a lot of, we use a lot of fancy gadgety tools that will score every time there's a click, score every time there's something going on, so we know when they're primed to buy, which helps the conversion rates for us, because we know if they're really, you know, watching our social media, if they've clicked on this, done that, it's a good time then for me to go and, you know, strike while the iron's hot with them. So I think, again, tools help the conversion rate.
Steve.
Yeah, I'll be really quick. To answer your question, check out, I mentioned earlier, Salesforce, new AI technology, Einstein, and also IBM's Watson. It can score your leads. It can give you actionable insight on when to contact leads. I mean, we all know the old the old future pipelines be keeping salespeople in jobs forever. you know, deals coming in next year, put it back, whatever that may be. So it might not be helping a lot of people, but it will help the sales manager be able to use the data effectively, have more accurate forecasting for deals, resulting in obviously less failures because they don't exist in the first place.
There we go, folks. Well, we spoke for longer than we thought we were going to. Was that useful, ladies and gentlemen? Good stuff? Round of applause, please. Thank you very much.